What is up, fight fans? DJC here, and with the tragic knockout loss that took place last weekend with Dominick Cruz when he got knocked out by the vicious head kick against Chito Vera, I just thought of something, making a video like, what if things had been different earlier in Dominick Cruz's career? Because as you all know, Dominick Cruz, a big majority of his UFC career, I believe, has been plagued by injuries. Injury after injury. And he spent most of his UFC career shelved. And Dominick Cruz, I believe, is currently 7-3 in the UFC. But he's been in the UFC since 2011. That's 11 years. He could have up to like 20 fights and maybe 20 wins if not for that. And he is unquestionably the bantamweight GOAT. But there's a lot of fights left on the table, a lot of title defenses missing. And I just want to break down what his career would have been like, how things would have been different had Dominick Cruz not been injury prone, had he just had a healthy, clean sweep all throughout his UFC career. So I'm going to talk about his first title reign, not when he came back in 2016 and won back the belt. But I want to talk about what if hypothetically he didn't end up losing it and having to, win it back. What if he never had those injuries? As you all know, he made his UFC debut in 2011 as the inaugural UFC bantamweight champion. He came in the UFC as already a defending champ from WEC, multiple title defenses there. And he successfully defended his belt against Uriah Faber in a rematch, avenging his only loss at the time, and then made his second defense against Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson in October 2011. So he fought twice in 2011. But after that, there was a big chunk of his career missing, a lot of years out of the game. In years 2012, didn't fight that year. MIA in 2013. He fought once in 2014, but that was the year he was stripped of his title because he was out for too long, and then didn't fight in 2015. And then 2016 was the year that he was healthy. He came back and he won back the belt. He never lost. But what if he never had to go through that process? I want to talk about the timeline of 2011 all the way to 2015, how things would have been different. So him and Uriah Faber, they were booked to have their trilogy in the summer of 2012, UFC 149. They did tough together, but 2012 was the first of the series of multiple injuries of Dominick Cruz. That's when he started to have bad luck with the injuries, and he ended up getting a knee injury, withdrawing from the UFC 149 headliner against Faber, which led to Renan Barão stepping in, replacing Dominick Cruz, fighting Uriah Faber for the interim title, and he ended up winning the interim title. But let's say hypothetically Dominick Cruz never got the knee injury. The fight was going forward as normal. And the fight went through. Dominick made it to the July 21st date against Faber. So what I think would have happened is, we already saw the trilogy happen like 4 years later instead, where Faber was a bit older, past his prime, Cruz was still in his prime, and Dominick Cruz won the trilogy fairly comfortably, easier than he won the second fight. I think it would have been the same result even in 2012. I think Dominick Cruz, after the first fight, he had surpassed Faber. He improved more than Uriah, and from there just had his number. So I think he would have beat Faber by another unanimous decision, but not as close as the second fight. It would have played out similar to the 2016 bout, but probably without the knockdowns, because by 2016, Faber was old, 39, a little more chinny, couldn't take punishment. But Cruz would have won that fight comfortably and dominantly, and that would have been his third title defense. And then there would have been more defenses after that, because Cruz overall only has 3 defenses. Faber, DJ, Faber again, and then lost to Cody. But he would have been on his third defense against Uriah, and I know the competition that Cruz would have had next after that. Basing off Renan Barão's interim title defenses, Cruz would have fought those same guys. But after beating Faber, I think Renan Barão was the clear next contender in line. That's why he got the call to fight for the interim title. I think we would have seen Dominick Cruz versus Renan Barão next by the end of the year. And I think Dominick Cruz would have beat Renan Barão. Barão was on a win streak at the time and would have been a very dangerous opponent. But seeing what Dillashaw did to Renan Barão, and the fact that he has the same style pretty much as Dominick Cruz, I think Cruz would have done a very similar thing to Barão, but it wouldn't have been as brutal because Dominick is not as dangerous as TJ and is not as much of a finisher. But I think he would have been a bad matchup for Barão. I think he would have outsmarted him, picked him apart for 5 rounds. It could have been close, but I feel like Cruz probably would have won that fight 50-45. So he would have been on his 4th defense against Renan Barão. He would have won that. And then his next fight would have been Michael McDonald, because that's who Barão fought as the interim champ while waiting for Cruz. They gave him Michael McDonald. So Cruz would have beat Michael McDonald fairly easily. And then after that, the next contender was Eddie Wineland. And of course, Dominick Cruz would have dusted Eddie Wineland and Michael McDonald both in 2013. So by the end of 2013, after beating Faber and Barão back-to-back in 2012 and going through McDonald and Wineland in 2013, that would have been 6 title defenses. But I do actually think Renan Barão would have been able to work his way back to another title shot, because outside of Cruz, I don't know anyone else who could have stopped Renan Barão in that division. I think Cruz would have been his only kryptonite before Dillashaw came along. And I think Barão would have rebounded. I think they would have done a rematch in 2014 when they were actually unironically supposed to fight. And I think Dominick would have beat Renan Barão again, and that would have been his 7th defense. And then Uriah Faber would have thrown in one of his former Team Alpha Male teammates, who at the time, TJ Dillashaw was from Team Alpha Male. Faber was notorious for sending out guys from his gym to fight Dominick Cruz back when that puzzle wasn't solved. So I think his 8th defense after beating Barão again would have been TJ Dillashaw. And I think Dillashaw never would have been champion had he faced a healthy, active, prime Dominick Cruz in 2014. Because I think 2014 Dominick was better than 2016 Dominick, much faster. The Cruz we saw against Mitsugaki was an absolute beast, and I don't think TJ would have had much for him. It wouldn't have been as close as the 2016 fight, and I think Cruz would have kept the belt from him, and that would have been 8 defenses. Another alpha male bites the dust as a title defense for Dominick Cruz. And then from there, who else would he have fought? I mean, Rafael Assunção was a top 5 bantamweight at the time. He was actually supposed to fight for the belt against Barão, but got injured. So I think, they would have ran out of competition and given Cruz Assunção that year in 2014 or 2015, I'm not sure. But Cruz would have easily dispatched of Assunção. So no one really would have been on Cruz's level in that timeline. And then let's say 2015, he's defended the belt 9 times by then. Dominick would have gotten bored, ran out of competition, and the fans would be like, wow, there's no one who could beat this guy. And I think everyone would start talking about Dominick moving up to 145 featherweight when Jose Aldo was the champion. And I think Dominick would have actually probably been willing to move up to 145. He probably would have tested himself at featherweight. And we may have seen a champion versus champion matchup between Dominick Cruz and Jose Aldo, in which I do think Aldo would have beat Dominick Cruz. I think he's a horrible matchup. He's got those leg kicks. He's too fast, too explosive, much better striker, and great takedown defense. So Dominick wouldn't have been able to use much of his wrestling, and Dominick would have got outboxed. Wouldn't have been a good matchup, but it wouldn't have mattered. He would have lost to Jose Aldo if that fight would have materialized. And then Cruz would have went back down and continued his reign of dominance at 135 until, of course, Cody Garbrandt came along and took the belt from him. So had it not been for all those injuries, man, Dominick Cruz, I mean, his GOAT status would have been further solidified. There wouldn't be that many title defenses missing. Dominick Cruz would not have 3 defenses. He would at least have 9+ defenses. He might have even had 12 defenses. He might have even broke Anderson Silva's title defense record before Demetrius Johnson could in the flyweight division. And I'm pretty sure Renan Barão at one point, I think when he was promoted to the undisputed champ after Cruz pulled out of their fight, I think after the Faber fight, I heard he was like pound for pound #1 before losing to TJ. Dominick Cruz would have had that spot if not for them injuries, which is unfortunate. He could have been pound for pound #1 or top 3. And history would have been different, man. I think Renan Barão would have most likely have never been champion. I mean, it's not impossible that he could have beaten Dominick, but basing off the style matchup, I think it would have been unlikely. And I think Barão most likely would have just had to settle for second best. There would have been a clear picture as to who's the best in that division between Prime Barão and Dominick Cruz. TJ probably would have won the belt still at some point, but not off Cruz. It would have been through Cruz losing to Cody and then TJ beating Cody, and TJ wouldn't have been a 2-time champion. Him beating Cody would have been his first time as a bantamweight champion. So I really believe Dominick, I mean, he is an all-time great, but like, he could have literally set a title defense record that the likes of Aljamain Sterling or other champs like Jan would have to like catch up to, you know what I mean? Like, right now, the most anyone has ever defended their title at bantamweight was 3 times. TJ Dillashaw 3 times, Cruz 3 times. No one has gone beyond that point. And back then, Dominick, from those years, 2012 to 15 when he was inactive, during those times, there was no one on Cruz's level. Cruz would have been a league of his own, and he would have had a bunch of pretty much easy title defenses. And he would have, like I said, would have at least had maybe 10 plus defenses. But Dominick Cruz, he's a legend, and he's definitely raised the bar for this division. Everyone has elevated to that next level because of Dominick Cruz. So Dominick, he deserves all the respect and the praise that he gets. And it's unfortunate that his UFC career has played out the way it did. And, you know, he's came back from his second, you know, hiatus after losing the title, and he's tried to make this second run for the title, but that window now is closed. It's really unfortunate, man. You know, life happens, and life sometimes sucks and isn't fair, and it sucks that Dominick got the worst end of it, but this doesn't take away from the kind of legend that Cruz is, and he's definitely a future Hall of Famer 100%. And if he chooses to retire off this loss, I mean, more power to him. He's not going to be champion again at this stage in his career, and with the level of competition that there is in this division, I just don't see him making it, and I think he knows that. So I don't blame him if he retires, but hopefully Dominick Cruz, you know, can come back for a fight or two and at least go out on a win, you know. That's what I'm hoping for. But that's it for my hypothetical video on what if Dominick Cruz never had an injury-plagued career and how things would have been different. I want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and peace out.